Yeah, right.
Is that what it is?
Yeah. No, I funded that. It must have been probably 3 weeks ago. And
For 10 on, it's up.
Yeah.
Oh,
good.
It's like,
Testing, testing.
I've got a order sheet.
I got
Oh,
two.
let me go. I didn't get to.
Testing.
Well, you told me you go shoot this one to make it through.
Yeah, I'm hearing.
I'm like,
You can hear it on yours?
Yeah.
Okay.
There, you know.
Then that's how you do it.
So,
But you.
Yeah, I know, like, you're looking for your child.
Exactly.
Yeah, I get you there. I mean, that makes perfect sense to me.
So the stuff
I
about
change
the
it to
culture
the live
change.
stream depending on who's talking for city council meetings.
We
And
went
I can just,
to
we can just turn it that way.
there are for sure.
Do you want to move up front or do you want to stay in the back?
Well, I was gonna ask you.
So this is obviously going to be used so much.
Okay, for sure. Then I'll just keep it that way.
You do whatever you want.
Overstepping his boundaries.
No, but, no, refreshments. But this is a little more, but.
Yeah. With one, correct?
What's that?
You're Zach Wolves or Outlaw Street? Zach, okay. Let's go with Zach, you deal.
Thank you, Mrs. First, and all of that. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I put it in it.
I'm happy here.
And tell them what you're listening. He leaves it out there, causes consternation with the public. That's not. No, it's not, that's good. I agree, that's something that needs to be transparent in all of these things. People need to be able to make informed decisions. That if you don't.
Data centers. We don't need the city getting in our business.
What is that?
This is their damn agenda.
Oh, sorry, okay.
No, that's
I thought you.
See, I need to look at the code today. I'm not a pro.
I know how to do. I know. Well, I didn't know that, but I do now.
Yeah.
And so, what's the supreme law? That constitution. We the people.
Well, yeah,
They don't
unless
listen
it
to
goes.
us for nothing. And all of this stuff that Mr. John Hawes, the president of the city, Washington, is going to come down with. I don't love.
Yeah.
Because they were trying to. The street I live on, residents. I take, I'm only probably.
I thought they had.
They changed all the zoning.
I know I asked them about it.
Residential, commercial, industrial. Now it's not one of those ones, all of this, and code enforcement. People process control every single day. We don't use our
He wanted to hit a little side. You're very close. What do they call it? I guess the village zone.
Oh, yeah. If you don't know. And his mom best friend. Loves it.
Yeah, I mean, it just doesn't make any sense.
Don't have an ordinance.
I don't know.
It's just strange.
I hear, you and Eric
Yes.
work together, I heard.
Yes.
Nate'll need to chat with you.
Yeah,
Mine is today.
Stressed.
And I probably should be.
Greg, you're gonna be on camera, just so you know.
I'm gonna be on camera.
If they do like they do on council.
Parts. worst thing could happen.
I just thought I would let you know so you wouldn't be looking at your phone or anything.
Are green gestures welcomed or are they frowned upon?
That's why I
I
said.
know it's hard. It's hard.
Yes, you can hide behind your pillar, I see what you're doing.
Well, I learned that, oh, yeah, I'm gonna do crap today and I'm on camera for 2 hours. No, 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 no. But I have sat where you're sitting and we capture you on camera. You don't care. Mine is. I do.
Well, the thing is I talk every,
This is not.
You talk frequently.
yeah, so it's like,
So it's only showing.
Yeah, that's what I said.
I'm just letting you know so that if it takes me a minute.
oh, I'm not seeing my.
Oh, so it's like the cool winter day about in your training.
Oh, miles.
Miles.
It's falling here, that's.
working earlier, let me rinse.
I put it in the middle.
Okay, then it's working now.
We ran into that one other time. It's like a 3-position switch and you gotta have it in the middle.
I'm sorry.
Technical difficulties, folks. By the way, the only camera is on the audience in the back screen,
We're trying to
so,
work through it now to fix it.
so this is not the regularly scheduled Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, but I'll do the roll call. Mahala,
Here.
Deidre,
Here.
Benjamin,
Here.
Stephen,
Here.
Patrick,
Here.
and John Boston here. Just so the audience knows, we are now short one member. So if you're interested in becoming a member of the Planning and Zoning Commission, get a hold of the mayor and talk to him. Okay, there's 2 items on the agenda tonight. The first one is a public hearing. The second one is a work session. I want to explain a little bit about the 2 items. The public hearing is on the proposed temporary ordinance as a moratorium for data centers. The city council will be voting on that item according to their agenda, on Monday, August 10th. And it also includes an item to waive the second and third readings, which we'll be talking about that a little bit tonight also. The second item on the agenda is a work session. So on the work session, you're welcome to stay and listen if you want, but we won't be taking public input because we won't be deciding anything on that. We're just trying to get our heads around what needs to be included and what the possibilities are. And Clayton will be leading us a little bit in that discussion. The work session is really intended to establish the scope of what we're going to include in the planning and zoning regulations for a data center. We'll be trying to find background information. We'll be looking at ordinances from other cities that have already been through this, university inputs, that type of thing. The staff, basically Clayton, will be providing some background information on what we've got so far, or what he's gotten so far. You know, some of the primary topics that you've all heard about is electric power, water usage, noise, things like that. But I'll bet there's probably 20 other parameters that we're going to be talking about in addition to those. Tonight, we do have a representative here from the Marshalltown Water Works to give us a little bit of information on what's controllable, what isn't controllable, hopefully, and give us some information on maybe what they've already found out about data centers. We do anticipate on the 13th, which is our regular Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, we'll be having a work session there also, but probably the first item on the agenda will be the long-range plan we have to approve and send to the city council. And then we'll be having another work session on data centers on that meeting also. With that, I'll turn it over to Clayton and let him give us a little guidance here on where we're going the rest of tonight.
Good evening, Clayton Ender, Assistant Director, Housing Community Development, your zoning administrator. Let's start with our public hearing this evening, and I'll give you a brief synopsis of this item before we open it for
So that's
public
item
comments.
1 on the agenda.
Yeah, are you ready to go into item 1?
Yep.
So in front of you is a proposed temporary ordinance for moratorium on data centers. A copy of that was included in your staff report or your agenda packet. This is provides definitions of what a data center is, what is excluded. Incidental computer server rooms are typically excluded, but places that have a primary function of processing data or transmitting data are included. We can certainly read that in full if need be, but the full text is there. We do define what development approvals would be included within the moratorium and what a substantial expansion to an existing facility would be. This ordinance would apply to all new data centers and to substantial expansions. The ordinary repair, maintenance of any existing facilities would continue to be permitted, provided it does not constitute a substantial expansion. So pretty much they can maintain status quo. Pending applications. To be clear, we do not have any pending applications at the moment. Nothing has been submitted, but in the rare off chance something would get submitted before final approval, the moratorium would still apply to pending applications to the extent that they have not gained a vested right. And that would be determined by the city attorney if they have a vested right. But looking at Iowa Supreme Court case law from even earlier this year, vested rights usually attach once they get an approval for construction, which under this moratorium, they would be unable to. So I highly doubt that anyone could get vested rights at this time, but that is included. We do include some exceptions, just in the off chance that there is a need for an approval to protect public health, safety, welfare, if it's going to create an unreasonable hardship. But for that exception to apply, it would require approval by the city council by resolution to enact that exception. I have no anticipation at present that that would be applied, but it is included within the proposed ordinance. The effective date, it would become effective upon final passage, approval, and publication is required by law, and it would extend to November 23rd, 2026. That is approximately 4 weeks from the original motion by City Council. Or not 4 weeks, 4 months, sorry. They made that motion at July 13th. November 23rd is technically 4 months and 10 days, but that was using our regular meeting schedules to get to an agenda that made sense. And we've previously discussed the schedule. I did include in here a provision that City Council would have the authority to extend this deadline one time by resolution, not to exceed 60 days if it is determined that additional time is needed to complete review or approval of any regulations. Any extension beyond that one-time 60-day would require subsequent ordinance approval. We do address violations. Those would be violated as municipal infractions. And then we have our standard repealer and severability clauses within here. So that is a quick rundown of that. My staff report did go through the standard criteria to consider when looking at a zoning text amendment, which this would be. I'm not going to go through that in full detail, but it is available on the staff report if needed. With that, well, the last thing I'll add is this is scheduled for public hearing on Monday, August 10th by City Council. So we are seeking a recommendation this evening. It is staff's intent to recommend City Council waive second and third readings of the temporary ordinance due to the fact that this is temporary in nature with a short time frame to it. We felt that this would allow for us to get to the business of conducting review and recommendations on any regulations. That's sort of the reason for that, but we can certainly discuss that further if needed. With that, I'd be happy to take questions at this time. Otherwise, this is a public hearing tonight on this action item.
You guys have a question for Clayton? When we do get to the point of making a recommendation, whoever makes it, please include the waiver of the second and third readings.
In the audience, you need to speak into the microphone, please.
Mike's here, it's on.
Turn off the game.
They're not hearing you, and neither was I.
Mr. Boston, can you
Sit
move it
closer
a
to
little
the mic.
closer to you?
Can I move it closer?
Yeah, can you move it a little closer?
Okay, is that better? Okay. I thought it was sensitive enough it would be picking up my whole voice. So, So if, when you make, when planning and zoning commissioners, when you make the recommendation, please include the recommendation for the waiver of the second and third readings. Okay, so item 1 on the agenda, public hearing and recommendation on ordinance 15123 on the amendment to chapter 156 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Marshalltown, Iowa, establishing a temporary data center moratorium. With that, well, one more, I only want to hear people commenting on the moratorium. This isn't a time where I want to hear you talking about how you like or dislike data centers. So please limit your discussion to the moratorium itself. And if somebody's already gotten up and said what you're going to say, please don't repeat, because we'd like to get as far into this process as we can, as quickly as we can. Thank you. With that, I'll open the public hearing at 5:10 p.m. Is there anyone that would like to come up and discuss this item or give us their 2 cents worth? I thought with the number of people here, there'd be someone, so.
You know, I always talk, John. Lee Botter, Marshalltown, Iowa. First of all, I want to thank you for your service, because you guys are under a crunch to get this done, we know. I won't speak for the crowd, but I'll speak for my household, okay, and my business. We just would like to have the moratorium go through, because we do want that full disclosure so we can make informed decisions. We're not fear-mongering. We want to be informed. And so that's what I see as an educational process. I see this as a opportunity, because we will be leaving a legacy. This is a legacy decision that we're making. It's much bigger than the feral cats or is a street being paved, that kind of thing. This is a legacy. The analogy that I used at work when I was talking to staff was, we're planting a tree. We may not enjoy the shade because we might not be here tomorrow. We may not eat the fruit, but our children and our ancestors will. So I do appreciate your service, and thank you for having that moratorium extended. I will ask if I could do this. I have done a little bit of research on University of Iowa is doing things, different questions to ask.
We've got that.
You've got that. Okay. Because I was going to say, can I give that to you? But thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else? Please.
Erin Carpenter, 802 North 4th Street. As someone who worked on the comprehensive plan on the steering committee and is on the stormwater advisory committee, I just want to reiterate my strong endorsement of this moratorium. In municipal planning, it's better to be proactive than reactive. And damage control, nobody wants in on that. The hyperscale data centers in general, it's a category of development with such extreme demands that our city code is so woefully unprepared for it. This moratorium is essential, and I truly, truly hope that the second and third readings will be waived, more as a cover your butt than anything else. I was reading some case studies from court cases in the past, and it seems like if somebody swoops in while the readings are under consideration, there is vulnerability from either a developer or from your own citizens. The waiving those readings may be the only way to avoid that. This is just risk management. And I highly encourage looking through the Reimagine Marshalltown comprehensive plan to, because even though it didn't address data centers directly, there is a lot in there pointing in the direction that I think the community wants to go. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening. Linda Clark, 306 South Second Avenue. And I have attended many meetings over my years of living here in Marshalltown. And I would reiterate what others have said. We want full transparency. We want to be proactive, not reactive. And I would like to remind you all, the Iowa Constitution is the supreme law of this state. And the state already does have code in the Iowa Constitution. And I'm sure that some of you must know that. But I would like to have full transparency and slow down. We don't need to waive second and third readings. And so I hope you will consider that, because all over the state, people are addressing this very issue. We don't need to hurry it through fast. And I would like you to consider that. Slow it down. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Good evening, Planning and Zoning Commission, 314 North.
I should have printed this out, but I'm Lane Peary, 20 East State Street. As the commission begins considering potential data center regulations, I encourage you to carefully evaluate appropriate setbacks from residential areas. Data centers are not a typical commercial or industrial use. They can involve large buildings, extensive mechanical equipment, significant utility infrastructure, and around-the-clock operations. Because of their scale, I believe is an
Would you limit your comments to the moratorium itself?
Yes, I'm asking if we could keep these in the plan for regulations while we have the moratorium. Just giving you suggestions on that front if that's allowed.
All we need is comments on the moratorium itself.
Okay, well, I'm very for the moratorium. I think you might find that with all of the different issues that people care about, you might need to extend that 60 days, and it might have to go to council and have them do an extension as well at some point, because there is quite a lot here. I'm not sure what you guys are already intending to look into as far as setbacks, but I do just want to reiterate that it's not just residential areas, but also setbacks from schools, parks, libraries, daycares, and hospitals, and other sensitive use areas.
There's a lot to consider.
There sure is. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Maggie Valentine, 2345 Whispering Oaks Road. I'm in support of the moratorium. I think a lot of people came thinking we would get a chance to talk about what's included in the regulations. I won't go into it, but I did just want to ask, when is an appropriate time for us to bring those concerns up? Because I think some of us thought it would be tonight.
No, actually,
I probably just misunderstood, but I'm just curious when.
our current schedule, we're actually going to have a public or a roundtable session on the 27th.
Okay, so you want to hear those
There'll
comments
be
during
a
the
public
roundtable.
hearing in the future.
Okay.
And then there'll be a public open house on this, probably at the Coliseum,
Okay.
like we've done with, a lot of displays and a lot of information. And then the city council will have 3 readings and of the actual ordinance, and one of those has to be a public hearing.
Okay.
So there's at least 4 more chances for you guys to talk about the specifics
But on the 27th, those comments are welcome for planning and zoning.
at the roundtable.
Okay, thank you.
Annie Grisham, 2125 290th Street, Melbourne. I spent today going through information published by location1.com about a data center site on Shady Oaks Road that was last updated on June 18th. Not long ago. I spent the day connecting owners and parcels in that.
Can you limit your discussion to the moratorium, please?
I would ask that you ask them to waive all the other readings, because parcels are already being advertised. We don't need to take a chance on somebody
getting in the door. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you. If there's no one else, I'll close the public hearing at 5:22 p.m. One thing I want to clarify is the recommendation we're making for waiving the second and third hearing is to waive the second and third hearing of the setting of the moratorium, because otherwise it'll be a month from now before they can actually set the moratorium, and somebody could apply and get the process started before we've got anything in place. So the waiving of the second and third hearing does not apply to the ordinance itself. It's only the moratorium. So we want to get that in place as quickly as possible. So if the city council agrees. So
Would I be able to ask a question of Clayton?
sure.
To your mic, please.
And Clayton, I'm sorry, I just want to make sure I'm understanding correctly. So irrespective of the moratorium, under our current regulations, if a data center were to want to move into town, it would require a special use permit. Is that correct?
At present, I have determined they would be classified as a major utility, and that would require a special use permit.
And so that would require staff review, a public meeting and recommendation to the Plan and Zoning Commission, Board of Adjustment, and then to the Board of Adjustment. So those 3 steps to complete, begin and complete that process.
Yep, under our current regulations, that would be the process.
Okay. So even prior, so if the Plan and Zoning Commission were to move to adopt the moratorium, then even prior to that moratorium being approved by City Council, the special use permit protections and process is still in place. So
yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
The only thing we wouldn't have is any of the parameters we're going to be talking about for the next month, which we're probably going to restrict them a lot more than a major utility.
This was more geared towards, I think I've picked up maybe on a concern that a company could kind of slide through prior to the moratorium.
I don't think
passed,
they
so.
can slide through. There'd be a lot of public input on it.
Yeah, no, that's, I agree.
Any proposal would require public meetings, public hearings, but if it came through, as this ordinance is drafted and should second and third reading be waived by City Council, I don't see a practical path that an approval could occur.
Thanks for clarifying for me.
Can I ask a clarifying question as well?
Yes.
Has the 2026 comprehensive plan been fully approved?
No,
No.
that comes to your to this board for public hearing at your August 13th meeting. And then we are asking City Council to set their public hearing for August, whatever their last meeting in August is. I think it's the 28th. Don't quote me on that
Yep.
date.
Then in reviewing it today, it is clear that data centers have been identified only as possible developments in what would be the industrial areas.
That
plan.
sounds accurate. And then I know we also have language within the draft comprehensive plan that we need to study and regulate emerging technologies as they become known. We did choose to go with that little broader language because this is a long-term plan, and data centers, yeah, they're the topic of today, but maybe not in 5 years or 10 years. We wanted to make sure it had shelf life.
Thank you.
That I need a recommendation.
I've got one more question just for clarity, Clayton. The moratorium is simply for approving a building permit, develop. It's not saying there can't be conversation between city staff and potential data center leads or economic development from that perspective. It is purely the use can't happen on a lot in
It'd be
Marshalltown.
building permit related.
Building permit related, just so that everybody has the same expectation of our
yeah.
of our public servants.
I would direct you to the definition of development approval, This lists the specific items that would be included within a moratorium. And maybe for the benefit of the record, I'll just read this out. Development approval shall include but not be limited to any permit, application, zoning amendment, rezoning request, site plan, development plan, subdivision approval, special use permit, variance, building permit, grading permit, utility extension approval, certificate of occupancy, or other city authorization related to the establishment, construction, expansion, or operation of data center. It would not be my interpretation that would preclude city staff or city officials from discussing prospects or learning about the industry from industry leaders, because that does not constitute establishing or granting any approvals. We simply don't have that authority to grant that approval.
All right, I'll move to recommend the recommendation to council for the moratorium, along with waiving the second and third readings.
Okay, I have a recommendation. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we got a recommendation and a second. Deidre,
Yes.
Benjamin,
Yes.
Patrick,
Yes.
Stephen,
Yes.
Mahala,
Yes.
and John Boston, yes. That's that topic. And just as a reminder to anybody watching online, this applies to the city of Marshalltown only, not the county. They have a separate process they have to go through just like we do, so. Okay, item 2, work session. Clayton, you got it.
All right. And I'm actually going to build off of what you just said between the city and county difference. Before I dive into the deep of this, I did actually meet with my counterpart, Tyler Kelly, earlier today. He's the zoning administrator for the county, and county is also exploring a moratorium of their own. He indicated August 20th, planning and zoning for the county as their first discussion item. So for those that in the audience or online that may be interested, you might want to watch those agendas for the county. But moving on to the work session item here, this is really our first chance to start to get into the meat and potatoes of this topic. I briefly gave you guys an introductory to this at your July meeting. We didn't get into debate at that time, so I'll refrain from repeating myself from there, but I gave you a fact sheet of how we currently regulate things. We can always refer back to that as needed. For tonight's session, in advance of that, I did reach out to professors from our 3 state universities, University of Northern Iowa, University of Iowa, Iowa State University, to try to get information from the academic field about data centers. What do we need to know? And so I've started to put together kind of a running list of resources that I found. And so I'm just kind of numbering them 1 to 5. The number is just for my sake of putting them in a file. I gave you the citation and then who they're provided by. I welcome any person, academic, citizen, business professional, whoever it may be. If you have reputable sources, provide them. We can add them to the list, make them available to the commission for your review. And we can continue this running list. I think that's a great resource there. One thing I didn't have the benefit of when I generated this was, which is now available, Hubble Environmental Law Initiative out of Iowa has put together a data center checklist, I think is what it's called, or something to that effect. And they have a lot of resources there as well that I think we can cite. But that just came online on August 1st, and it wasn't fully functional by the time I had the agenda out, so I didn't add them on here. I'm not going to go through each of those. I just provided them there so that everyone can see kind of what I'm seeing at least. But then for this project, I really recommend us using a process where we look at our goals, follow that with research, analysis, and then we move into our policy and implementation stages. So right now we're at that initial stage of determining what are our goals, what's the community expectations on this specific topic. Analysis kind of runs in tandem with that, but our goals should help guide us in our analysis. And I've certainly heard plenty, either on social media or just through community discussions to start some of that analysis work, but I hope to get more into that and get that guidance from this body tonight on how you want to direct that there. Some topics that we could begin discussion of, and this is certainly not an all-inclusive list, would be what are data centers, the types and scales, economic development opportunities, electrical infrastructure, water supply, noise, emergency power, building size, construction activity, compatibility with land uses, environmental considerations, other peer communities. Those are just a sample of things we can look at and begin discussing. But if there are things we want to drop from that list, add to that list, now's a good time to start considering that as well.
Do you want us to make comments on each of these items and just go down through them, or?
I don't know if we'll get through all of them tonight, but I think we'll, throughout this process, we'll probably start touching on all of these things. I think it'd be an extremely long meeting if we deep dove into each single item this night alone.
Well, I wasn't talking about
Yeah.
digging in very deep, but
One item I would suggest, since we have the benefit of Waterworks in the audience this evening, is maybe focus on water supply.
Yeah.
I have made arrangements that Alliant Energy will be at your August 13th meeting. I have invited Consumers Energy as well as another one of our local service providers. I have not had confirmation of if they will be there or not, but an invitation has been extended. So I would think that our August 13th meeting would be a more proper time to focus on energy usage, and we can maybe focus on some water concerns tonight as well,
Yeah.
amongst other things.
I know on the definition, we want to be careful that we don't accidentally include data processing within a business somehow. So that it is basically commercial data centers we're regulating, and somehow that doesn't get crossed over into the data processing department of a business. So since we got a visitor from the water department, let's talk about that topic first, because I know everybody's hot topic is they use a lot of water, but my thoughts is we don't want them to use any water. So how do we figure out how to do that with the water department? So.
How would you like to invite them up to
Yeah,
to
I
discuss?
think if they just come up to the microphone along with you, and
Do you mind joining us? Would you like to introduce yourself?
Good evening. Zach Maxfield, Marshalltown Waterworks General Manager.
okay, so if a data center came into town and wanted to hook up to your water supply, what would you tell them?
Just like any business, any other industry that's looked to come in before, there's a long process that comes. So typically we would get some kind of dialogue going that would ask questions like, hey, how much water do you have? What's your main size in front of the area? We figure those things out first, because if a data center or anywhere else wants to build out and wherever, and we don't have the infrastructure there, we can't supply you. From there, though, we might start conversations of, do we need to upsize lines? Who's paying for it? Things like that. But currently, we don't have the capacity to feed more than 100 or 200,000 gallons a day to anybody.
So if we wrote into our ordinance that they were only allowed to have enough water to basically take care of employee needs like restrooms and a kitchen, and maybe that's a 1-inch water line, that'd work just fine with you guys.
I mean, currently, but there's fire flow fire protection is the biggest need, and they're going to need more than a 1-inch line.
Well, but that'd be a separate line too, wouldn't it?
It'd be a separate line, yep.
Yeah.
But that's going to be their most places' biggest need is fire protection to make sure they have the capacity there for that.
Big sprinkler system in a big building, you gotta have a lot of,
Yep, and just
lot of
because we
pipe.
have, like I said, 200,000 gallons of surplus right now, doesn't mean the line outside could meet fire flow protection flow rates. I mean, there's a lot of things that go into that. So without knowing the size of buildings, what kind of
Right.
protection they need, it's hard to put a cap on really anything. Because I would hate to say, yeah, a 1-inch line for a bathroom, and then we forget about fire flow.
I just remember the city council approving when they're doing Main Street separate water lines for the sprinkler systems into each one of the businesses, and I thought that was a smart move.
For sure. And then also, I mean, you know, we've heard a lot about closed loop systems. Well, you still have to feed a closed loop system every once in a while. You know, you have to fill that line up, and so we could supply 3 million gallons over a couple days. You know, or
Or they could truck it in from someplace else.
potentially, yeah. But I mean,
Yeah.
it's hard to put a cap on something that I don't have much information to go off of.
Yeah.
We are also in the process of building a new treatment plant that should be done in the spring of 2028, where we will have more capacity, but we're looking at about 2 million gallons a day of hard capacity. So, I mean, anyone that wants to come in and use 4 million gallons of water, it's not going to be possible.
And just out of curiosity, if they were outside the city limits, you guys supply the water for outside the city limits too, don't you?
It'd be us or rural water, wells. I mean, there are other options for that. But I mean, that is a possibility, yes, but then that has to be, you know, they'd have to file an annexation form, I think, with you guys, go through city council, go through us for approval. But there's steps and processes of that. Nobody can just build outside of city limits and ask us to hook up without prior approval from you and the city council, and then our board also.
Okay. I'm asking the question so the public hears it, the answers, so.
That's fair.
Any commissioners have any questions?
Yeah. How do you determine whether a proposal will disrupt water service to neighboring sites? Like if a factory or something's going in, they're going to need a lot of water. How do you make sure that water service won't be disrupted at neighboring lots?
Yeah, so we have a pretty extensive hydraulic model that we've done. I think it was in 2022. That has all of our flow data, which, you know, you can go through it. And if you put in, let's say you want to put in a random building here, we can look at what their gallons of needed would be and what it would affect the rest of the pipes feeding to that up and downstream. And so there's certain fire regulations and processes like that where we're not required. You know, if you want to come and suck up all the water at some place, we're not going to have enough pressure or velocity in other portions. We can't allow that. The DNR wouldn't allow it. So there's things like that, but we have a hydraulic model that we've done where we can type in a gallons per minute or an average day, and it'll show what it'll do the rest of our system. Just because you want to, let's say we have, like I said, 200,000 gallons, you want 200,000 gallons, but we only have a 4-inch pipe there, you're not going to be able to get it. So there's a lot of things that go into that, that I can't really answer.
You have to see specifics to answer a specific question for a specific site.
Correct, because
Understand that.
there's so many things that go into this. Like I said, line size, what part of town, elevation, flow rates in that area, other big users that are in in that area. So it's just there's without having a certain project or people that we can talk to, it's hard to want to put a cap on something because we want to be able to serve who we can. That's our job, serve community and serve the other industry here.
Okay. Anybody else?
Do you have standard benchmarks that like they need to pass before you will approve an expansion?
So we have our rules and regulations. I don't know if there's anything that really talks about a development coming in and they have to use certain quality of pipe. They have to, meet certain fire flow data, which the fire department and insurance companies, review. So there's nothing like on that our end. We're required by the DNR to maintain a 20 PSI throughout our whole system. That's what the DNR is required is safe. 35 is the standard practice for, anything above that is great, but 35 PSI is where the standard is there. We're not allowed to go below those kind of numbers. So if you want to use, like I said, a certain amount of water, you can, but those are the benchmarks that we look at. And we look at every big development, every new townhomes that are getting built. We have developers agreements that get approved by our board that we work through. There's construction permits that we have to sign off and the DNR has to sign off. You can't just build a big industry without us or the DNR, our board, agreeing to. And you have to follow Marshalltown rules and regs to inspect for that stuff. If anything in there, I would just like to make sure, like, if we can somehow get it written that we're just involved. I don't want the fear of an industry coming in. Yes, I said you have to file a construction permit, but I'd hope that we'd be involved into that point in any conversations that we would have to make sure, one, we can supply them and it is adequate and we can, continue to support everybody else. I would like to figure out a way to make sure that we're involved from, day one with plans and design.
I do understand, but I'm not sure everybody does, that when you go through the permitting process, that's a whole nother part of the city going through everything in detail to making sure that everything works.
Right.
That's totally separate from like the planning and zoning code and the noise ordinance and that type of thing. So a lot of stuff gets caught at the permitting process.
For sure, we review all any plans that come through for that have water, and it's amazing how much things that we catch and realize that, hey, this wouldn't work. You go back to the engineer, they change it, they fix it, they resubmit it, and then we would sign off on it. And on a scope of like this, we probably have an outside consultant kind of, look over things to make sure that we're not missing something.
Okay.
As we, what we're going to have to do with this is define allowable data centers, and we're going to have to manage the water risk or the find a threshold the community is willing to accept. And one thing you said that I hadn't heard yet, and if you know more, awesome. If not, we have homework to do. Is closed loop is a very popular term for easing everybody's mind on pulling water out of the system, but you said that it still will require water. I assume evaporates or whatever. They still have a need
Well, you have to
for
do
water.
the initial fill.
The initial fill, but after that,
And after that, I am not an expert on closed loop systems. I agree. That's a term that gets thrown out there for, I think, peace of mind. I've heard, and I haven't confirmed, but I've heard, other industry that uses a closed loop system that uses a lot of water. Because if it evaporates or it has to go somewhere, or you have to refill your system so often. I mean, it's not just going to be one use realistically of here's 1 million gallons of water. You can't just run that through your system forever. They're going to need another 1 million gallons of water or whatever. And so I don't know if it's fair to just say closed loop systems only. Or
that's what I was looking for, because we're going to have to come up with some sort of definition that manages that water risk. So
yeah.
I think we all have to think about and learn a little bit about the different types of systems.
And
or
maybe Clayton
at least
knows-
maybe Clayton has a good definition that incorporates that.
I'm not going to pretend to be an industry expert yet. I'm learning along with you guys, but what I have learned so far is closed loop system. They do have an initial fill up, and that can vary based on the system, and then they will have ongoing kind of top offs of the water, but it won't be up that high volume. It might be a couple 100 gallons, or depending on the system, just because there is some evaporation. But the technology is, as I've learned it, has evolved to where they can run these run the water through the server racks at higher temperatures now, so they don't have to cool it down to 60, 70 degrees and have as much evaporation. They can now run it through it at 100 degrees and get the cooling effect they need, because electronics has evolved over time. So I think we're also chasing a moving target as the technology changes. So we will have to continue to explore that. I don't know if just saying open loop ban, closed loop open allowed is enough, because that's maybe too generic, and maybe isn't addressing the real problem, which is the water usage, not necessarily the system and manner in which it's being used. That could be part of it. One thing I want to add to the conversation now is Zach and I have started talking about right now we don't have actually any requirements that you have to connect to the water system, and you could have wells here in town. Well, we're suggesting that we look at requirements that users be required to connect to the water system and private wells be banned within city limits. That would help protect our underground aquifers from someone trying to bypass, well, the waterworks doesn't have it, I'll just drill my own well, and then they deplete our water supply. So we are looking at that as well, and that may be a means to address the water usage as well as how you supply the water.
I would have guessed that we already didn't allow independent wells in the city limits, but
At present, we don't have any code language regarding that.
that's something to
that
put
a lot
on
of
the list too.
Yeah, it's something that a lot of people assume that was already in there that isn't in there. And so right now, there isn't anything currently that says you can't. I mean, we have to apply or approve well permits, but I think they could still potentially happen. So yeah, we don't want the big industry to come and be like, no, we're not going to use city infrastructure if we can supply it.
Yeah, and I think it should be clear that wells still do require permits either from the county or from the state at present. So it's not like they're unregulated. They're just not regulated by the city.
It's not the city.
But they're regulated by the county and the state.
Okay. Okay, what's next, Clayton? Thank you.
Yep. No, thank you guys.
Maybe before we move off of water, what sort of homework do you want to give me or possibly Zach on information you might need to help you along? You might not know all the answers now, but what do you need?
You had mentioned how you wanted the water company to be involved in these permitting processes. Do you have any ideas right now, or are you willing to come up with some ideas of how you think you could get involved with the process?
We could try to come up with some language. It's just unfortunately right now, a lot of people, industry developments, they do talk to us right away, and we are involved. But there are the occasional that aren't, and then we're stuck answering the questions after something maybe got put in that didn't meet customer standards. And so that would be, my request is trying to figure out that way where we can be involved. And I believe that a project of this scope, I don't know what that scope is, but, industry like this, we are typically involved, but that would
We can put it into the code that it's required to be reviewed as part of the permitting process and send
Yeah.
some guidelines around
Yeah, I
it.
think we
That'd
could
be
put that
great.
into procedures. I would suggest if we're looking at that we don't make it specific to data centers, but any high water user, because whether it's data center or
any
another,
industri-
I think you're going to be interested.
I think we're going to bump into several items that we want to do on an industrial customer basis, not just a data center basis.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking as well. What's good for one use is probably
This is just
good
the
for
first one we're going to talk about, so.
and that might make actually adopting code a little easier for us.
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know.
We don't want to get into a situation where the city could get sued because we specifically picked on one industry when it which really should apply to every industrial customer, so.
Yep.
Clayton, I think we need somehow to get, if it's not binary, right? If it's not open loop bad, closed loop good, then we need help from you to understand the shades of gray, or in how to draft in a way that allows for the shades of gray.
And over time, that technology could change, where in 5 years, they have a whole new cooling system that we haven't even visualized yet. So,
And if at that point that brings us back to the drafting table to look at the code again, then that's what it does at that point. But as if we don't have to do that 6 months out, if we're waiting 5 years.
Yeah, and I think that's where my mind is how do we write this in a way that we're accounting for the rapid evolution of this technology. Computing technology throughout my entire life has just been exponentially growing, and it doesn't seem to show a sign of stopping. So, yeah, 5 years down the road, yeah, maybe we can come back, but I don't want to be coming back every 3 to 6 months.
And I think if we could come to some kind of a draft language that Waterworks supports based on their understanding of the water availability, given all of the industrial and residential uses, that would be a strong step in that direction.
Yeah. Anything else water supply related at present? We can always, we can, and I suspect we will circle back to this. But that, all right. Well, then, kind of coming back to the broader theme of goals, starting to kind of identify a goal of, how do we make sure that we're treating all industrial users, same if they're high impact users, we should probably be reviewing them in a similar manner.
Yeah.
So that seems to be one goal I'm hearing. Would general nods? Yeah.
In several areas, that's true.
Yeah.
There'll be some things that are specific to data centers, I believe.
Yep.
So,
Let's maybe, I'm kind of bouncing between the topics of discussion and the goals, kind of trying to think of them.
Steve and I talked the other day on a topic. Everybody talks about data centers in megawatts or gigawatts, but that can change so drastically with computer technology. The one example I've used a number of times is that in 1980, the Fisher Controls SCADA systems for controlling a big chemical plant or something are about equal to what my cell phone is right now. And, and so at a point in time, the rule of thumb was you didn't come out with a new computer product unless it was half the price or twice the capability. Well, that still is somewhat true today. So, I mean, a 50 megawatt data center today in power could do the same thing, do twice as much in 5 years as it's doing today with 50 megawatts. So I think we have to control it more by square footage than we do electrical capacity. Because how else would we control the place? And I don't know what other people think, but
Yeah, I agree. When I look at it, it's just impact mitigation. And what's the actual impact to the community, the folks that are here? It's something visual. It's something audible. It's what's the actual impact as opposed to, what's going on inside for us to measure would be impossible. And that's what's so hard about the water conversation is it's impact mitigation. It's the opportunity cost of water going to this as opposed to being there for economic development or whatever it be. So keeping it framed around what are we actually going to experience and then determining, I love the idea of applying this to everything industrial because it seems strange to talk about this structure differently than we'd talk about the structure on any manufacturing facility and talk about this noise differently than we would talk about this noise on any manufacturing facility out in our industrial park.
I wanted to echo your concerns about how fast things progress, because if we start getting into the specific numbers, I mean, it's been identified as something called Moore's Law, that the power of processing squares every 2 years, and that's been true for like the last 30, 40 years, and there's no facts saying that it's going to change anytime soon. So when we start getting into specific numbers about that sort of usage, it starts to get stale incredibly fast.
yeah, we want to stay away from memory capacity or data processing capacity type stuff because it'll change so fast it'll make our heads spin. So
What topic would you guys? I don't have a particular order here, so if there's a particular topic you want to focus on next,
well, one other thing that I know I've heard about on data centers is a few of them have their own power generation, and we want to make sure they hook up to the grid and not generate their own power. We don't need them building their own little power plant. Now, they might need a little power plant for a data backup if the grid goes down for some reason, but that's a whole different ballgame. That, you know,
Yeah, and I had on here backup generators, and I have seen and heard of places that will allow those as accessory uses, but we would probably want to include some regulations that clarify that they are meant for emergency backup or secondary. They're not supplemental to get additional power for your facility. They're there if the grid goes down, essentially.
they're only available, they're only to be used when the grid's not available.
Yep.
Type of thing
Yep. So I think we could look to include some language
in that area.
In some of the content that you provided to us, Clayton, there were examples of data centers being constructed incorporating solar and or wind power. I don't think the wind power was U.S. based, but when
that was
John,
everything was U.S. based in the articles, I think.
Was it? Okay. John, when you're talking about restricting the power plant, are you also thinking about restricting construction of their own green energy setup on site? Or are you thinking burning coal or burning gas? Or frankly, nuclear?
Well, my thought was just to make sure, for example, we don't want them putting some huge diesel engine system in.
Yeah.
You know, maybe a natural gas powered turbine so that minimizes the noise and hopefully the pollution. We don't want them using coal, that's for sure, you know, and but any solar or wind generation they can do that fits within our requirements is fine, but we don't allow a lot of solar on the ground either, so.
Only in industrial areas.
Only in industrial areas, so.
I think that's a great distinction to make, though, based on the means of power generation. A solar panel array, whether it be on the roof of one of these facilities or on the ground, doesn't have the same impact as a gas-powered turbine. It still can have an impact, but it's not the same.
I have this blue sky vision in my mind where we understand that we live in a data-centric world, that we are taking advantage of being in a data-centric world on a common basis, and it is only going to increase. And what are the ways that we can then be a part of what that future looks like without it having negative environmental or social costs or economic? And so if we can talk about things like, you know, encouraging renewable power and reducing the water load and all those other things, that would be positive.
Well, maybe that's a good segue into another topic for us to discuss, is just broadly environmental considerations. What are our goals? What are we looking to protect? Are you willing to sacrifice anything? You know, it's wide open, but you know, where we're hearing that we want to protect our groundwater supplies, we want to make sure that we have water capacity. That's an environmental consideration. Allowing for green energy is certainly
State and
something.
federal,
What?
State and federal already have regulations on pollution and that.
Yeah, but there was an executive order by President Trump. I can't remember if it was last year or this year that relaxes or suspends some of
Federal
those
ones?
some of the federal regulations
Does
on.
the state cover that? The DNR?
Feds are typically stricter than state.
Yeah.
Well, that may be, but
So that's something I could certainly look into more on, you know, what the kind of
I don't-
what's been relaxed
the only
because
thing
of
I
that.
can think of that would be related to a data center would be the backup power generation that would have any pollution to it. But maybe we also need to have a list of any hazardous chemicals they might have on site.
I think, Clayton, that comes to the question that I asked earlier tonight, is if we are looking at data centers within predefined industrial zones, recognizing that we haven't yet approved the comprehensive plan for the community. I mean, those are areas that we have said are appropriate for development already.
Yeah.
Which to me ameliorates some of the environmental conversation. Not that we don't want to have appropriate handling of groundwater on the site and all of those other things, but if we're citing our industrial together, then we're citing our industrial together.
Yeah. So I mean, one thing we can look at, you know,
I don't see allowing this in any residential areas.
I would be surprised, but
If we took a poll,
Yeah.
but
would understand that we're not talking about that.
Yeah.
but when we're thinking of data centers as a topic as a whole, there's a whole spectrum of uses running from, you know, the edge data centers that are meant to be local and close to the end user. They're smaller in scale, smaller in electrical consumption, as a general rule of thumb. Scaling up to the hyperscale that take up thousands of acres, gigawatts of electricity potential. Well, you probably don't want that hyperscale right next to your residential, but is there a scenario in which a smaller edge type data center that's maybe only 1,000 square feet, does that fit in a commercial zone? Maybe, maybe not. Or do we want them all just to say, regardless of size, regardless of type, industrial only?
I think that's an overreaction a little bit, only in that what's the building going to look like? It's going to look like the building we put up for all sorts of uses. So I think we've got to look at the actual impacts. It's a physical building we're going to see. It's a physical building we're going to hear because it has cooling. So we already have code around all those risks, you know, except for cooling source and backup generator. But what else don't we have code that exists for? So we're really just getting in the weeds and saying, are we mitigating the risks of physical structure and sound enough? Otherwise, we're just kind of on a weird dance trying to define this odd thing and stick it out in the corner. But realistically, it could be just a small building on one of our local companies' campuses that they need and is less disruptive than a lot of other buildings they could put on that campus to house their mower. So I think I think it's wise to say we may end up having to spread them around, but they're going to be small. And we're going to have to be able to scale that according to code and have the code there, which all exists now. Accessory buildings and you name it, it all exists.
But that could almost be an accessory building. I'm thinking on a data center, we do something like small, medium, large, and extra large. And, you know, we have different setbacks on each of those. Maybe the extra large, we say they're not allowed at all within the city limits. So we can say, you know, they're 100,000 square feet, they're 100 to 200 or 200 to 300, and then they're not allowed.
Yeah. As long
Now we're talking about buildings the size of Hy-Vee Walmart, you know, type of thing, or smaller, not anything bigger.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think the buildings should be sized according to all other commercial use allowed sizes in the community. But I think we already have that code, so I hope we're not trying to reinvent the wheel with that code, along with noise ordinances and vibration.
We don't vary the setbacks in that by the size of the building. Yeah. But I think we might want to do that on this one. So
that makes sense.
The other thing is on screening, you know, if they've got all these fans or equipment outside, and normally we say, well, you can't have more than an 8-foot, you know, fence, and that thing's 12 foot tall. I want a 12-foot fence hiding it, you know. So I'm thinking screening might be a little, you know, unique to data centers, and buffering, you know, for putting trees around the outside parameters and stuff to break up the view. So just things top of my head I've thought of in the last couple of weeks of people talking about things and then receiving phone calls. So what else you got, Clayton?
All sorts of things. Do we want to talk about the types and scales of data centers? We loosely touched on that now.
We already did.
We kind of did. I mean, is there kind of are there any scales or types that are just non-starters with the commission?
I think if you've got something, I don't know what the maximum is, but I don't want to see one of those monster buildings that's, you know, 500,000 square feet. you know, I just don't think it fits Marshalltown. You know, I think the biggest building we got in Marshalltown is the Governor Road Fisher Factory, and it's like 350,000 square feet. So could be wrong. I don't know that there's anything any bigger than that.
I guess I don't know what.
Not on one floor, anyway. There
Yeah.
might be something that's multiple floors, but
Um,
I can see us saying that we only want it to be, you know, single story type height, and they can't start stacking one on top of another.
and are you thinking in terms of this as a single building, or do we look at it as a
Single
campus?
building.
So could they have multiple smaller buildings that aggregate up to that larger?
Don't know why they would want to do that. Don't know why we would want to allow them to do that. I mean, even if they expand, I don't see them expanding by adding a second building. They can build onto the building they already have and put a doorway in it, you know, like other people do for businesses.
And I'm thinking in terms of, and
Maybe
at
I'm
this
all
time I'm
that, I
gonna
don't know. So
I'm gonna open up Google Maps just to use some references, because if we come down to Altoona, the Meta campus down here, you know, a single building here is not going to be super precise, but I'll ballpark it. 380,000 square feet for one building, but they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I don't know what these other buildings are, but at least 10 buildings.
They have over 5 million square feet under roof.
Under 5 million square feet under roof, but spread through multiple buildings. Well, if we just say we don't want a single building that exceeds 500,000 square feet, that could get built under that type of categorization.
yeah,
Is
I
that
wouldn't
what is that
wouldn't
what we want?
that either. I
mean,
in my mind, it's one business, one building, and maximize.
Are we going to treat every industrial client that way? I mean, if let's say one of our local industrial clients said, "Hey, we want to do all new manufacturing, but we need a big building," are we gonna tell them, "Well, sorry, we don't like large footprints"? And how do we draw the line at what the right size of footprint is?
Yeah, but if we don't draw the line somehow, we're going to end up with one of these, or could. Push your button.
Yeah, like separating things into like different building footprints, like for a lot of users might mitigate like fire risk and stuff, like
Yeah.
one building gets destroyed as opposed to.
And like down here at the Meta campus, it came in phases over a decade plus. They're not building it all at once, so you could still want. This would be considered, I believe, a hyperscale campus.
Yeah.
Versus, while not, to my knowledge, no longer used as a data center, it's recently been purchased by Mechdyne. Down here on Governor Road, we had this building. We're just south of the fairgrounds there, for reference. $50,000 square feet for a single building there. I mean,
That was the old Fisher Controls data center.
yeah. So I mean, is that the size we're talking? That
That's, to me, is small.
I mean, those are two examples. They're kind of extreme differences, but I think that helps illustrate that this topic isn't just a single type, single size.
Not an easy
How do we
decision.
regulate that and the hyperscale and treat and be fair
We'll let you figure that out.
with your help? So those are just two campus examples there. I don't know if I heard from John and a little bit from you. I don't know if anyone else has strong thoughts on type, size.
I think my answer is right now, I don't know. And so I'm trying to understand how we as a group come together in a common understanding of what the sizes are, right? What the gray between closed loop and open loop is, so that we can be speaking in the same language and have an informed conversation rather than a shared group of opinions that may or may not match one another.
Yeah, and
that's, I think, where we need you.
In my research, is some industry terminology out there, but a data center can be classified under multiple things simultaneously, so we have to be careful there. I've heard, there's edge data centers, enterprise data centers, co-location data centers. Those are kind of about the users and who's in it. Then you got the scale, the hyperscale. Well, that's a size. That's not necessarily a user element. You have AI data centers. You have crypto mining. Those are, again, back into user or type of function of it. So what terminology are we using? Because we could have a hyperscale co-location facility. We could have a hyperscale enterprise facility. We could have a edge co-location. So
to me, that's
they
a
can
little bit like Chevy, Ford, Buick, Chrysler type thing, but they've all got car regulations, how size, related, how much pollution they can put out, that type of thing. So we got to figure that out for this monster too.
We know there are water limitations, so that affects, I suppose it would affect an open loop tiny building as much as it would affect a closed loop giant building.
Probably.
But so we understand there are water restrictions or water limits. Are there also power grid limits, or is Alliant Energy saying to us, do it all and we can handle it all?
We'll find that out next Thursday.
Yeah, I think that's a good one to hold for next week.
But that to me is how we start to get at some of these things, whether we're talking about scale or whether we're talking about size or we're talking about the technology of the system itself, is what are the limitations that we're thinking about in all those different directions. And through understanding those, maybe we'll come to that clearer view of what the appropriate picture is.
Yeah, what terminology we want to use and settle on.
What you can do with a small building, you might not be able to do with a huge building.
Really?
Yeah. I found that out. It's a lot easier to manage 5 employees than 500,
So we've kind of touched on overview of modern facilities, types and scales. Those have kind of bled together. We've loosely talked about environmental considerations. We've talked about kind of emergency power, backup generators. We've talked about water. Electric's going to be next week. One thing we really haven't touched on, we've kind of touched on building size. What about noise? We currently do have noise regulations for our city.
We've got chapter, was it 130 something? 134? It covers noise. We need to look and make sure that would cover this. Plus, we've got chapters on outdoor lighting and signs and that kind of thing that probably would apply to this already.
So 134. We have some exceptions in here. But these are the sound levels permitted, and it's so at present we determine a noise violation based on the receiving site where you're actually hearing the sound at, and it's based on zoning district. So residential districts are most restrictive. So we expect the sound to be quietest when you get to a residential, and residential is also the only place we have a distinction between daytime and nighttime sound limitations. But these are our current standards, and we already have language in the zoning code that says that they have to comply with this and demonstrate that. For example, the Bobcat Energy Center that came before the commission earlier this year, they did a sound study, and they were able to demonstrate that they'll be compliant with the residential requirements when they got there. So I mean, we do have regulations on sound already. Are these robust enough is more the question, or is there any changes that need to happen?
And I don't want to get into a situation where we get this all done and then find out there's a gotcha here because nobody can build to that level. We've been using these for a lot of years and not had a problem that I know of.
And we got a 3 diesel or natural gas turbine power plant that's able to meet the 60 and 50 residential. So it's proven that industries can meet it.
Yeah.
I mean, it is possible. You could design for it.
I just don't want to overlook anything is what I'm saying.
But so technically speaking, 134 is outside of zoning, but we do reference within zoning back to this. So it is proper for you to look at these. But I would imagine that these would continue to reside within chapter 134, which is to reference back. And this is enforced by our police department as noise ordinance.
Just like outdoor lighting, we've changed the code so they can't put up huge lights and have it shining in the neighbors' yards. So,
Yep, we do have that currently. We can always look at that, but we do have outdoor lighting under 156 Article H. We're not going to go through all the details, but we can look at those standards if we need to.
One thing that I thought of was, you know how we do on a big apartment complexes, and we say you have to use 3 of these 7 different features.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking we might want to do that with industrial buildings in the particular area of the precast concrete, so we don't end up with just smooth concrete walls, and they do some, different things.
So you're on more of an architecture thought right
That's an
now.
architecture topic and making it look nice.
So
And we do that in other areas in zoning, so.
let's transition there really quick.
Colored, textured, patterned type of thing.
Applicability. Exemptions, since we're talking that many of these facilities will probably be in industrial, I think it's important to note out, we currently exempt general industrial zoning district from our architectural standards.
I'm questioning whether we should be exempting them.
This would be a proper time to do that, and it certainly could apply to all industrial users.
All future, yeah.
All
They
future.
don't have to change it if they're already there, but.
Yep.
Somebody came in and built a new 100,000 square foot building, they can't just have it smooth concrete all the way around.
But at present, they could, if
At
it's in
present,
general
they could.
industrial.
And when I got looking through the code, I thought, we need to talk about that.
And then we also have the secondary, depending on use, so we'd have to fix it in several different manners there.
Yeah.
I think it should depend where it's at. I mean, we may need a few separate districts. We may not be able to live with general industrial having all one code, because we have general industrial 2 blocks from our CBD. We also have general industrial next to a giant power plant in the middle of nowhere. So I think we really have to have in our head, we may not get away with just one code for all of GI that includes this. We may have to either overlay zone or split it up or something.
Create a new district.
Or create a new district, because 18th East and Madison North are a completely different ballgame than, the GI that runs through the middle of our downtown. And we need to treat them differently, and we need to make sure that those large scale operators aren't burdened by cumbersome architectural design standards to be next to a power plant.
Where do we have general industrial 2 blocks? Fisher?
It goes right up into town. Yeah, our industrial district.
Oh, okay. Wasn't thinking of that one. I was thinking of the Edgewood and 18th Avenue.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I think about, I just mentally divide, 18th East and Madison North.
So everything, this is our current zoning map. Everything in purple is general industrial. That comes right to
All the
downtown.
railroad area, yeah.
Yep, but
Yeah, clear outside of town, architectural standards, I think, can be eased.
And right now we do regulate it based on zoning districts, so that may just be a reason why splitting general industrial up into some different districts might have merit beyond data centers alone.
I'd agree.
GI1 and GI2.
I'll see if I can get more creative with naming.
Yeah.
Base it off of like adjacent zoning districts, or like classify it by like what kind of roadway it's adjacent to, like if it's along a primary traveled roadway that many people see versus like a road that primarily serves just other industrial business traffic.
Yeah, we do actually have some language currently. I was just there. That does regulate it based on location of if you're along an arterial road or a collector road. So we could look at something like that as a case study as well of, hey, if it's not visible from a public street, do we care the same as if it's visible from the public street?
We do have to be careful, though, that it's really easily understood by developers that don't live in town. That it's easy to look at our zoning code and make a determination of if their idea fits. So it's easy for us to sit here and come up with pretty complex definitions of everything because we have an in-depth knowledge of the community. But sometimes a really nice, pretty picture and having the zoning map reflect what we want is the best tool for economic development, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Right.
I think we've given Clayton enough to think about for the next week, so.
Yeah, so maybe that's a good
Have any
segue of
Specific items you want to cover yet?
I'm just going through the list of what I had here. I mean, I'll get you examples of peer communities. That's not something for tonight, probably. I don't have any examples. I think the only one on this list we really haven't touched on is economic development opportunities of data centers. Do they present an opportunity for us?
Undoubtedly, with some risk, we should be leveraging the resources we have in the community. We have the power plant. It's a tremendous resource. We need to leverage it, but without, it's not without risks. We need to manage those risks carefully. But it'd be crazy not to leverage that resource.
Comprehensive plan talks about, getting more employees and more people in town and more housing every year, 60 a year, I believe is what I remember.
Yep.
And, plus with the state of Iowa limiting tax growth to 2% other than new building, we don't want to be in a situation in 5 or 10 years where we can't fix the roads because the entire tax base is being used to run the city.
Yeah. On data centers, I think it is, a lot of what I hear out there is, they don't employ a lot of people. And I think there is some truth to that they are not high employment. They're not going to carry the same employment as like JBS or Marshalltown Company or Lennox. But they do have employees. But I think one thing they really bring is the trades skills get jobs, especially if we're able to attract multiple users, if that's what we want. Construction jobs, they're real jobs. I mean, we have a strong construction trades industry here in Marshalltown, and it's wise for us to support that, let them have local work. I don't want to dismiss that industry.
Have you taken a crack at defining a data center yet? Or could you? And something for us to fodder over.
I would take you back to the moratorium ordinance as kind of the broad data center definition.
Okay.
Which includes the secondary, what it doesn't include. I think that's a good.
And you like that definition for zoning ordinance?
Point?
I like that as a broad definition of data center. I think we're going to need to define probably subcategories within it. We're probably going to, for example, you talked about like small, medium, large, extra large. That may be a way to do it. Lynn County did their data center ordinance, and they had a small and large category based on megawatt usage. So we probably do want to have additional definitions in addition to this, but as a starting point of broadly what a data center is, I think this is a good starting point. And we could have as many subcategories as we see fit.
Feels like that would be useful to see in a matrix of some sort.
Mm-hmm. That's something I could provide for you. I kind of like the matrix approach. I don't know, I didn't think about that, but now my brain's wheels are spinning. That's something to work on. So my notes are a little scribbly, so bear with me. As things for next week to turn around and get to you. We're going to talk about electric next time. We'll probably revisit some of these topics again. Big one I think that we need to come back to is just definitions and what they are, and getting to your matrix of types of uses. That's something I could work on over the.
Well, let's look at what Lynn County and some of these others.
Yeah, I
use
could
for
provide
definition.
you examples of what other communities have done.
Yeah, send us some examples this week. That'd be good.
Yeah, that's something I can work on. What else do you guys want me working on over the next week?
I think we've given you enough.
Yeah, this is a lot of work in a short period of time.
Yeah.
John and Clayton, what do you want us working on in the meantime? Where should we be spending our energy to be prepared next week?
I'd say start looking at other peer communities, preferably Iowa communities. Then I would probably expand that out to Midwest and then national as a whole. But I think focusing within Iowa is important because they're going to be like for us on state regulations.
We've got a Iowa Utilities Commission that's pretty strong. Some states don't have that. And I think that might be an advantage for us.
But I mean, some communities out there, Cedar Rapids, Council Bluffs, Altoona, West Des Moines, Waukee, and I'll look into these as well. I'm probably missing some communities in there.
What's Johnson got?
For those in the audience, I was previously an employee for the city of Johnston, so that's why he's asking.
Yeah.
To my knowledge, I'm not aware they had data centers from during my tenure there.
My impression is every city in the state of Iowa is probably going to have a zoning ordinance on data centers within the next year or two.
Yep, and this is something that is rapidly evolving. I see a lot of communities starting to enact moratoriums, counties and cities. That seems to be the trend happening in the last month or two. We have, academic organizations such as the Hubble Environmental Law Initiative looking at this, providing us great guidance. That's some homework for you guys is take a look at that. They have a great resource list there. Let's open that up really quick. And this just went live. I think it was on the 1st. A decision tool is what they call it. I would encourage you to look at this. They have partner resources here. I have not looked through all of these yet, but I would take a look through these. This kind of goes to what my idea was of the tracking reference list. They kind of did that for us. So I still welcome many references out there, but maybe we got a good list now that we have this out here.
There's organizations like this that have done a lot of work that we can basically plagiarize and use the information and education that they can provide us.
And they have great tools for us to be asking, and we've started covering some of these topics tonight, but you can look in here at their decision-making tool and, questions to be asking. Water resources. Maybe this is a good one since we have Zach here. Let's make sure we didn't miss anything. Was the source of water? At present, it'd be aquifer water. Amount of water that we've kind of briefly touched on that. We would have to know specifics of the project. Cooling strategy. Again, we'll need to know the specifics of it. Wastewater is something we haven't touched on, which is probably a good one. At present, I would anticipate that they'd be discharged into our wastewater system for treatment at our treatment plant. which Waterworks and our wastewater, they work close in tandem in capacity. So those should balance out.
That means we need to know what additives they're putting in that water for cooling purposes.
Yep. So there'll probably need to be some
I guess
limitations
for the
there.
public, it's kind of like your car. You got a radiator and you got antifreeze in there, and there's all kinds of chemicals in that antifreeze. So they got a cooling system that's going to use some kind of water wetter, I'll call it, that helps keep corrosion out and transfer heat faster. And who knows what those chemicals are.
Zach, I'm gonna. Is he still? Oh, he left. So I'll follow up with him. But I just had a question actually that popped in my brain. I want to follow up with him. I wasn't sure if our capacity was based on a standard. Does it get impacted by drought or seasonality? So I think that's something I could check on and follow up with him on.
Probably summertime when you're watering lawns is going to be the highest usage.
Yeah, and that's also when we're at most risk for drought. So you can have both, but we want to make sure we're accounting for that. We'll touch on energy, incentives and economic development. During construction, things to be thinking about. Road use agreements, noise impacts, lighting. So I'm not going to go through this in full detail, but this is an amazing resource that we're lucky our University of Iowa was able to put together. And I think we're going to have the benefit of being one of the first communities to utilize it fully. So take a look at that. I think that's great homework for you for the next week.
Perfect.
We done?
Is there anything more you want to touch on this topic today? Otherwise,
Well,
as you said,
before we close, I have a feeling a lot of people came here expecting that they could voice certain opinions. So could you go over the calendar before we leave so that way people leave here knowing when they can come in and have a public comment period about everything?
Yes. So here's kind of the remainder where we're at. August 13th, you'll have another work session like today. I'll give you some of that follow-up. We'll hear from electric utility. We'll start to have a good understanding of some of the base questions that the commission's asking. And then on August 27th, we will be holding a community roundtable session that will be held at the Coliseum, second floor. Doors open 5 p.m. Event scheduled to start 5:30. Taking what I'm hearing from the commission between this meeting and next, I should be able to put together kind of a talking outline, a facilitated discussion of topics that we should cover. We won't have draft regulations for the 27th. The purpose of that is to hear from the community before we make those draft regulations. So that would be an opportune time. We'll probably have it set up with individual tables, 6-8 people per table. Good, probably hour, little 15-20 minute introduction at most, followed by hopefully an hour 15 of group discussion, and then wrap it up with bringing it back together as a big group and hear from everyone together so everyone can hear what the individual groups were talking about. We did a similar with the comprehensive plan as well. And I thought that was pretty productive. So that would be that. And then taking what I heard from tonight's meeting, the 13th plus the round table, that will then give me hopefully the resources to put together a draft, a rough first draft. And I'm going to be clear, it'll probably be rough because there's a lot here. But September 17th would be the time for that. And then we'll, beyond there, we have October 1st for an open house, and then we get into council. I think some of those dates, while we have them listed here, they do kind of remain a little tentative pending what comes about by the 17th. But that August 27th date, 5 p.m. at the Coliseum, I really hope people show up, tell us what we need to hear, ask questions. I welcome people to also reach out to me and talk to me in the interim as well. I'm available. I'm here at City Hall. I'm available by phone, email. I'll do my best to dedicate time to this. I do want to be clear. I do have other duties to attend to in my position, so I can't devote 100% of my time to this, but I will do my best to respond to everyone in a timely manner. And that, I don't have anything on this. I do want to remind you, we do have that meeting scheduled for next Thursday, August 13th. That is our regularly scheduled meeting. I do
That's the
have
one where we need to cover the comprehensive plan.
I actually have a couple regular business items for you that meeting in addition to the work session. We will have the comprehensive plan public hearing. We will have a public hearing on a rezoning request for Marshalltown Company for them to do some off-street parking expansion. And we will have a recommendation on a special use permit for solar panel arrays for Mechdyne. It's actually on that former data center building, which has since been purchased by Mechdyne for their corporate use. And then we'll have the work session. So I would anticipate
Just make sure the work sessions last.
the work session will be the last. I imagine the order I tentatively have it in is the special use permit, rezoning, comprehensive plan, work session.
Okay.
Are anyone expecting to not be available? I want to make sure we have a quorum.
Yeah, I won't be there.
Everyone else?
Hopefully we'll, in the near future, have a new member for
Yep.
the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Yep, and as a reminder, we are seeking a member to fill the remainder of Matt Brodeen's term to the Planning and Zoning Commission. For people that are interested in applying, if you come to the main Marshalltown webpage under the government boards and commissions, we have a tab for apply for a board or commission. This is where you would come to fill that out, pick whatever board you're
Do you
interested
know
in.
when Matt's term was up?
Let's look that up. His term goes through March 31st, 2028. And I know it was put out on social media. I don't remember if a deadline was provided or not. That this has transpired in the last couple hours, so I don't. If you have questions about what it involves being part of the Planning and Zoning Commission, for anyone in the audience online that may want to participate, please reach out to me.
Or
This
me.
is, huh?
Or me.
Or John. The data centers is certainly a topic we're going to be dealing with right now, but there's other regular business we'll be attending to and future topics that who knows what will come up next. So just bear in mind that it's more than just one single issue. With that, I don't have anything further for you this
Okay.
evening.
With that, meeting's adjourned.
Oh, crap. You scared me there.
Sorry, I should have tapped you on the shoulder. I'm guessing you